And mindfulness is just a different way of describing a state of full awareness. And what I mean by full awareness is that our whole organism is engaged in perceiving what's happening. And most of the time, because of our upbringing, how we've gone to school, the society that we live in, the cultural background that we might have, cognition has really been favored over all the other channels of awareness that we have. However, we also have the capacity for somatic or body awareness just through our sensory systems. And that's become muted over time because if we don't use it, we kind of lose it. As well as emotional awareness is incredibly important to be able to have feelings to tell us whether our needs are being met or not met. And again, there's somewhat of a stigma, thankfully that's changing nowadays, around bringing attention to what we are feeling, right? We've been mostly operating from a cognitive standpoint. And unfortunately, what that has done is it really has cut down the amount of access to resources that we have. But when we actually engage, not just with cognition, but we supplement that with having body or somatic awareness, as well as a connection to what we are emotionally experiencing. When all three of those channels are open and in balance, there's the possibility for this potential state of full of awareness, or I'm going to call that also mindfulness. And in this state, the qualities of what I can experience is that I'm alert and I'm present, but there's a relaxation around that. My system is completely open and receptive for new information. I notice a vividness or details I might have not noticed before. And that gets us curious and it gets us engaged, and we are operating from a place of interest. And so that the engagement actually is effortless. So the paying attention is not something that we need to push or make happen or invest a whole lot of energy. It's natural. We're in flow. And as a result of using all of our faculties to meet each moment, there is a level of attunement and connection that feels very different than our day-to-day life where we're just using cognition. And also with having more information available, there's a possibility for clarity. We can see really what matters and what is true in that moment. So the good news is that this is a natural state and it's accessible at different times of the day if we decide that we want to have access to that. And if you think about it, mindfulness, this capacity is innate. Isn't that how small children come into the world? They come into the world completely insensory. They are touching new things, they're tasting it, they're experimenting with it, they're dropping it, they're noticing the sounds, and they're using their cognition to connect the dots. But it's in balance with the sensory or the somatic part of their awareness, and they're very also connected to their emotional attunement to what's going on, right? Primarily, they're using that to guide their decisions. And so mindfulness is readily available. So I became very curious, well, if mindfulness is readily available, how come I'm not experiencing it more? What's getting in the way? Because if I'm interested in having more of these states, then I probably want to know what are the conditions so that I can have access to this more frequently. So I became very curious, and I have a science background, and I started investigating this. I won't go too much into the details, but just keep it really simple. That one of the things that I have learned is that conscious awareness is not always available. And the number one threat to conscious awareness is our perceived sense of safety. If we do not feel safe, oftentimes we lose consciousness. And the reason for that is we actually have two operating systems that can potentially run the show. Simplifying here, the one in blue is our unconscious default operating system that takes over consciousness in times of emergency. And the benefits of this operating system is that it's very fast and it can react very quickly to get us away from the threat. The downside is that it's not very accurate in perceiving what's going on, but evolution favors safety over accuracy. The other operating system that we have is highlighted here in orange, and this is where our conscious awareness resides. And it's also where a lot of our higher function cognitive abilities are, such as problem solving, such as analyzing, understanding, predicting. But in a time of an emergency, the problem with using this part is that it takes too long to understand what's happening and to react. And so this is why if there's any threat, perceived threat that's going on, we actually shut down the conscious awareness so that the other operating system can get us out of danger very quickly. Along with that, consciousness varies, right? There's moments where we're kind of semi-conscious to moments that we are very awake and aware. And what modulates that is not just our brain, but the rest of the nervous system, which is made up of these cable network of perceiving neurons that also can execute decisions. So I know I'm going into abstract territory there. Hang in there, I've got one more slide. I'm going to break this down so it makes a little bit more sense. Our awareness is actually a product of the state of our nervous system. And so depending on how activated our nervous system is, it's going to affect the availability of conscious awareness. So when I'm talking about activation of the nervous system, I'm just really referring to how much information it's receiving at any given time or the amount of stimulus. And of course, that's going to have an impact on awareness. So if you look at the bottom left-hand corner where there's sleep, well, there's not a whole lot of stimulus going on there. And so the awareness level is very low because I don't actually need so much the nervous system at that point. But as the stimulus starts to increase, the nervous system becomes engaged and the amount of awareness also increases. And so when there's not a whole lot of stimulus, mostly we are in a state of semi-consciousness. But once there's enough for the nervous system to be engaged and it's alert, but still relaxed because it can have enough time to process and digest the information, that is our optimal place of performance. If I go beyond threshold, however, and I give too much information for my nervous system to process, it starts to feel like it's on overdrive. It starts to feel stressed. And this is a threat to our safety because if we can't process the amount of information that's coming at us, we can't understand what's happening and we can't respond appropriately. So as we start increasing stimulus, our awareness starts going down. We start lapsing back into semi-consciousness because our emergency operating system is starting to take over so that it can react appropriately. So all of this to say that if we're wanting to experience more mindful moments, we really need to protect our nervous system. And that the nervous system is designed to take a certain quantity of information at any given time. And that if we exceed that amount of stimulus, we compromise our ability to have conscious awareness. Now, the bad news is that our current lifestyle that we have, our modern lifestyle, never in evolutionary history has the human nervous system received more stimulus than today. And so as a result of that, there is this chronic, pervasive, collective stress level that is in the background. And the result of that is we are experiencing at the collective level semi-consciousness, meaning we are operating below our capacity.